Hello and welcome to Elvenhome, and a slightly different start this week because I've got quite a lot to get through, much of which until I started doodling on Saturday evening I didn't realise I'd be doing, but you'll more of that in just a minute. What I'm going to be doing, I'm just about to start today, this is Wednesday, to do some scenic work over by the school, because it occurred to me that if I don't get that done now, as I start working around here and finishing this off, it might be quite difficult to get over there without giving something a biff. So I want to put the children, finally, including the kit that Henrik sent me ages and ages ago, and the other ones that Tony sent me about 6 months ago, maybe a bit longer, into the school, fix down Laurel and Hardy into the school as well, and some other adornments which I have tried out and I rather like. But you'll see those at the end when I finish doing the work. In the meantime, I've also been looking at how I fill this gap here. I think you can see it, where the line is going to cross. And you know we're going to have the bowstring bridge up there. I've mocked up a tunnel entrance and roughly where I think the cliff will be. It won't be a big square block. There'll be more shape to it than that. But that's roughly what I want to have at that end, something. So how do I get the bowstring bridge? Where's it going to go? And what is it going to look like? So I started doodling last Saturday. Let me take you to some work I've been doing. One of the things that I've been sort of quietly wrestling with is how I'm going to support this bridge, which will fill the gap between Sharkey's End Station and High Elven. And the thought that occurred to me, again, one of these things of an evening, was, well, I would quite like this to sit on a support which can go on to the abutments that I've already built on the one side, and then onto something on the other side. The something is still as yet undecided, but I've got a vague idea. And so I started doodling. Let me move the bridge up. First, well, actually move it out of the way because I need to put something else there. And this is what I started doodling. Let me bring it to the centre. So the bridge is sitting on a platform which is supporting it, and which is the bit that goes into either side of the abutments on one side and into the hillside probably, or into something built on the hillside on the other side. And I've always liked I think they're mainly, actually, in fairness, on the Swiss railways, where they've got these many bridges that they have to use as the trains wind their way up the mountainsides, and they have to cross ravines and things, which have a lovely curve underneath. Now, of course, it's one thing to draw this, it's another thing to start making it work. And part of the reason why I'm doing this video now, spoiler alert, if this doesn't work, you'll never see this video. One of the reasons I'm doing this is I've just started putting together the bits to try to construct what will be two constructions, can't think of another word, one for each side of the bridge. So obviously there'll be one here and one here, which is what the bridge is being sat on and is supported, because those are taking the load and transferring it into the hill or onto the abutment at the side. So that was the easy bit, drawing that. For a while now, I've been looking at my early build Metcalfe buildings. And generally speaking, I'm really pleased with them. I wouldn't want to change the terraces. I think they look really good. When I was looking at the vicarage recently, I noticed that some of the chimney pots, which I'd forgotten to varnish, the sun is beginning to get at them, and it brought back to me something which has always bugged me about Metcalfe buildings, which is the chimney pots. Now, I don't think Metcalfe has any other way to do this than the way in which you create the chimney pots, which is it's a strip of paper printed, which you roll into a tight cylinder and glue. I can remember the pain and agony of producing all the chimney pots to go on, but there's a problem with them, I think, which you have to sort of ignore, which is that they are disproportionately big. If you go onto sites to buy replacement chimney pots, you will find that the majority are not, well, the biggest I think you can find is about 700 millimeters tall, and usually with a girth, unless you're buying some really impressive pots for a very large mansiony type place, which is no bigger at its widest point than 1 foot. Now that's 2 millimeters in end scale. And try as you might, you will do well to fold a 2 millimeter wide chimney pot. Now, these may be okay in terms of height, although I think they may be a bit tall. But for the buildings they're standing on, they're immeasurably big. So I thought I would have a go, because I came across there's 2 of these buildings in the pack. And the second one I built up, but I've never actually used anywhere. And I went and had a look at Smart Models chimneys, which I've been looking at for a while. They do a good range of 3D printed chimneys. You get 6 for £2. I think, well, some of the chimneys are 6 for £1.99, which is pretty much the same price. They come on a little sprue, and I will show you. I bought 2 kinds, which was the short and tall chimney pots. So if I bring these into focus, the short is on the right, tall on the left, obviously. I painted these up myself, a terracotta colour. Now this is, I worked out how to get terracotta from an acrylic artist's website, and inevitably quantities were not given, nor even proportions. The basic foundation is red, a fairly flat red. He used vermilion red as a tube. I used Valejho flat red, and I used sort of 2 to 1 of vermilion flat red, and the next thing that goes in is some yellow, but you don't want to make it so that it turns to a bright orange. So go easy on the yellow, and even as I did, you can come back at the end and put a bit more yellow in if you're not getting the right terracotta colour. To that was added a tiny bit of black, which was 1 little drop of Valejho black, 2 drops of Burnt Umber, and mix those together. And then you use white to give you the shade of terracotta that you want to get. Now that was where I thought it still looked more brown than orange. And so I put a little bit more yellow in, and then used the white to get me the colour, the eventual colour. So that's the best I can tell you. I'll put in the description the rough things. It really is something you'll have to do by trial and error, because there were not specific quantities or proportions from this website. This is what they look like on the model. What I will do now is zoom out. I hope I'm going to zoom out. There we go. And I will move you round and zoom you back in onto the picture is probably not the sharpest. Now I've put both the long and the short on here. I just think they look immeasurably better. They sit in the building. You don't notice them as much. Now it's not going to be a cheap job replacing all the chimney pots, but I'm now in a quandary, because I'll zoom out and bring it up to the camera so you get a better quality picture. Here you can see, if I bring it into focus there, that's the short pots, which are a bit squatter. They're just stuck in using the peg at the moment, which is why they're a bit wobbly, because I want to reuse this and I don't want to use this building. And there are the tall pots. Now what I was going to do along the 2 terraces was I was going to put the tall pots on the main chimneys between each house and the short pots on the small chimney breasts that run down the centre here. But I'm not sure now, and I don't know which of the two I like the most, and that's really quite important because the number that I order, I think this is going to cost me about 50 quid or so by the time I've ordered all the bits that I need, maybe a bit more. So I do actually want to get it right. So I'll be interested in your opinions, which you think of those two is better. So there's the short when they're straight, and there's the long. But I have to say, I think those are so much more in proportion than the ones that you can make from paper. And the little, also sticking them on, I drilled a small hole obviously to put the sprue through. Just it was fairly straightforward, and they're holding perfectly well. There's no glue attaching those, even though one of them's a bit wonky. And it will be no small task gently to remove the chimney pots that are on there. And I probably will also, these are the ones that started it all on the vicarage, and you can see how much the sun has got at those. And indeed it's starting to bleach the side. Something will have to be done about the vicarage at some point, but not yet. So I'll be interested in your views as to which, the short or the long, you think look better. Because I think I could go with doing short all the way through and use the long ones for the station, and then I'll get some more ornate ones to put on the vicarage. So there you are. That's your exam question. Let me know in the comments which of the two you think might be best. I then translated that into a more scale size drawing. Initially I had it 23 230 millimeters, keep it in millimeters, it's easier that way, wide, but I'm remeasuring it's only 220, which is the distance between these two parallel lines. The bridge sits there because the top little gap you can see here is the width of the base. So the bridge is sitting there, and the track sits on this base, this thin base here. You can see the width of it. So that sits on there. And what I had in mind was then, now how do I make the bow and also something on top that would actually support the weight of this, and then transfer it to the brickwork, stonework, whatever it is underneath. And so the first thing that I thought would be to use solid stripped styrene, because you can get stripped styrene in various thicknesses. So something like, for example, he said rapidly, there we go, this is a piece of 4.8 by 4.8 solid stripped styrene. And so what I had in mind is that you would have one piece there, and then you would bend a piece into there, and that would create the two. I thought that might be a bit heavy, and it also seemed to me that actually the piece going across here probably wouldn't be solid. So instead I'm going to use some of the H-beam that is 4.8. I'm going to have to go and buy some more because I don't quite have enough. So that's the H-beam that would sit there as going underneath the base. And I don't have enough of this, so I went off to Harben Hobbies to get some more. Now, by a happy accident, I wasn't really watching what I was buying, because this is indeed 4.8 by 4.8, but if I take it in, it's tube, which is actually rather good because that bends better than, or more easily. However, the thing that I really could see with this is that getting this to stick to that only at this center point really and stay in shape is going to put such tension into the structure. You know, I wasn't sure that I could pull it off. So what I needed to be able to do was to bend this. And that left me with a bit of a conundrum. How would I bend it? Until I remembered that this is, of course, plastic. And this is where the happy accident of using the tube makes life a bit easier, because heating the other plastic so that it would bend and take shape could have been done, but it'd have taken a lot more than this. Though you do have the problem with this, that if you get it wrong, the whole thing will just collapse in itself. So the first thing I had to do was to work out what the radius was of this curve. And I discovered that the curve is just a shade under 12-inch radius. Let's move this out of the way. So having established what that curve was, and I did that, I have to say, entirely by trial by error with the very large set of compasses that I have, which are the ones that go up to about 19-inch radius. And so in 2mm card, I cut the radius, and you'll see that is indeed that radius. And I was going to try and fix this down and then bend the thing round. Now, as you see, I thought that's going to be a devil's own job, because to be able to hold it and put the heat gun on, so I've got a heat gun, was going to be really difficult, until it occurred to me that this equally is the radius. Now, it's got to be the outside radius, because of course the inside is going to be a smaller radius, because that's 4.8mm closer in. So that's going to be essentially two concentric circles, one 4.8mm smaller radius than the other. So I thought, I know, if I stick this offcut onto the card, this will be much easier to hold down and to bend the box section into here. And so it proved, because I now have two pieces of the box section which have been bent to shape. Now, inevitably, once the way I did it was that I clamped this on the end of the desk that I've got here, and had three clamps, one holding here, one holding there, and one holding there, which were holding them largely under tension. The heat gun, I then played gently on this, and you can see as the heat is taking it, because it where it's slightly sprung away, it was folding into the jig. And that is how I have achieved this part of the build. Now, inevitably, once you unclamp them, they slightly spring out, but that is going to be so much easier to put in for the bit that I need, and I can cut off one or two of them have bent rather more than other parts, but I don't need the whole section, so I will simply take the piece that gives me the smoothest curve, and the two of those are now ready to be used. So the next stage is to work out how I'm going to fix. I mean, this now will fix in place and is virtually in shape. So when I'm filling in here, it won't actually be needing to put any stress on that joint, because there's not going to be much surface area joining the pieces to each side. And it's not like a real construction where you would be bolting or welding in the bits that are fitting together. So that's where I've got to so far. The next thing, I think I'm in two minds whether I will use rod of some description to provide a few, there'll be one there and then one a bit further in, or whether I will use strip styrene, so that it's a square piece of 4.8 millimeter, and that would go across the whole of it. I'll see which I like the look of best, because if it's rod it wouldn't be very wide. You wouldn't have a 4.8 millimeter, well, whatever that is, what's that, 2.5 foot round section, I think, because it would just look out of proportion. The other thing is how I finish the ends off, and I think I'm going to put them into a plate that helps hold these the right distance apart. I'll see, so that it's all working to hold the thing for when I fit it onto the layout. But from this diseased idea, I think I'm getting there. So we'll wait and see whether I do indeed produce a bridge that is usable. We're now a couple of days on, and I've been busy working out the design for how I was going to put all the bits together to get the bridge. And the fact that I'm talking to you must at least suggest that I've managed to do something, which I have. And there it is. Now, it's in separate parts just yet. There's a couple of things I need to do to finish it off. This itself, I have stuck with the 4.8 millimeter HB, but when my original idea was that this would be stuck directly underneath here, and then I would just stick these on at the top and put the plates in at the end, as I mentioned before, which I have done. But it occurred to me that actually I also needed to put something between them. They look wonkier on there than they do in real life, however. And that's just to give it strength so that the two halves are not pushing apart. because otherwise it would just be held at the end. When I put this onto the layout, I always knew that there was a gap. If I push this on here, there was a gap at the end here, but I'd miscalculated by 2 millimeters, because if I put this right onto the H-beam, then I'm 2 millimeters too low, which is a bit annoying. However, strip styrene comes to the rescue, and so I got some 4.8 millimeter by 2 millimeter strip styrene, which I put on the bottom. That will stick to there, and actually that gives a nice look underneath, or will do when it's finished, that these beams are not resting right up against it, so there's sort of air to get under there. What I'm going to do is, because I had to sand the underneath here anyway, there were slight lips along both of these, which meant that this didn't sit flat, and it wouldn't have sat flat on here, so that had to be sanded down. I'll probably paint this black here, probably, although I might paint it the same colour as I finally settle on for here, because although I painted it all red, that was just convenience, and I think actually I'll just reprime that again and paint it all the same, either the same colour as this or just black, so that it doesn't, the red really shows above it. And actually a black strand along there might help pick that out rather nicely. Not sure what I'm going to paint this. I'm inclined to think that these are concrete more than anything else, or well, yes, concrete probably. So I might put the light stone on there, but equally it could be box sections of metal. So I've got to make my mind up as to the colour, and I can't finish this bit anyway until I've done a few other things. So this at least gets us to this point of the build. But I do actually have the bridge that I wanted, and I've got to build the abutment that this will sit on. This sits beautifully on the one that's there already, which is good. And I'll probably paint this a dark grey so that it sort of blends into what's there, and that will give the image of these going into the abutment as it sits there. And then depending what I do around here will be the same with that plate. So a bit of painting and masking, and for the next video I would hope to have this in place, because I've also, which I think I've worked out, but I hope that I can do it so I can show it to you rather than just talk about it. This is going to sit permanently on the layout, but the track that sits on top has to be able to be lifted off out the way if I need to get the whole board that's sitting over this side. I think I know how I'm going to do that, but we'll see, and you'll see in the next video. So that's really brings the end of this build so far, which, considering it set off just as a scribbled diagram on, when was it, Sunday evening or Saturday evening, I'm not too unhappy with that, I have to say. So that brings this section to a close. Let's go on to the next one. You will have seen in the running session earlier in the video that I had completed all the work that you see in front of you before I did the running session. And the two locomotives you saw running were my two most recent sound fitted locomotives. The little 4F, which I think is coming into shot now, and shortly emerging from the left will be the new Farish Standard 5. I ordered this locomotive 3 years ago when it was first appeared in the magazine, in the days when Graham Farish and Bachman just put things in the magazine however long it would be before they arrived. In the summer announcements, it was announced that the locomotive I had chosen, 73109, was going to be a sound fitted version. So a quick phone call to Rails of Sheffield and my order was converted to the sound fitted version, and I'm really very pleased both with the locomotive and with the sound scheme that's on there. It turns out I hadn't realised when I ordered, at the time they were only going to be doing 2 or 3, and this one is lined black early BR, so that's my period, and all the others weren't. And so I ordered this one, but it turns out that 73109 spent its entire working life from 1948 to 1962 at the Eastfield depot just outside of Glasgow, and must have been on passenger duties over to Edinburgh, and certainly did passenger workings up to Aberdeen. So it's very much a local engine, which is rather nice. The scenic work that I mentioned, you'll have seen that the children have gone into the playground. They really are small, goodness me. But that's nice. That's given it a nice look. And I realised that the area around the school was pretty bare. So I was thinking, what would I do? When I came across a box which I hadn't opened for a while, and in there was a complete set of trees from the model tree shop, which I bought, I think, actually in the last Model Rail Scotland before COVID hit us. And so they are adorning various parts of the layout. There's more to go on elsewhere, but I rather like putting the trees in, and I've also put an extra light under the big tree that's there, so that there's a light right by the entrance to the school. There's more scenic work I think needs to go on there to put a bit of bushes and things, but I'm quite pleased with what's gone on there so far. So I mean, this video contains things that I never expected to show you, because until last Saturday I didn't know I'd be doing them, and I really do need to turn my attention now to what I was going to be doing up at High Elven. The next video won't be for 3 weeks, because we're off down to Cornwall, and with a bit of luck I might get to go on the Bodmin and Winford Railway. Last time I was there I actually got to ride behind City of Truro before its boiler ticket expired. So I'd be interested to see what, if anything, what is going to be pulling the train. Something will be pulling it, and it should be steam with a bit of luck. If you've liked the video, please do give it a thumbs up. That's very helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe, because it'd be great to have you along. And of course, if you have any comments, they're just so immensely helpful to me. I'm really grateful for everyone that takes the time to leave a comment, and I do make sure that I reply to everyone. So until I speak to you again in about 3 weeks' time, that's bye-bye from me. Bye-bye.